Welcome to a new section of the course. In this section, we will start exploring data structures in Python, and we'll be starting with lists. Imagine a grocery list where you write down the items you need to buy from a grocery store. That's essentially what a list is in Python, a collection of items that you can work with. A list in Python is a way to store multiple pieces of information or items in one place. It can hold numbers, strings, or even a mix of different types of data. It is just like when you are packing a suitcase for a trip. You can put clothes, shoes, or toiletries in one single case. Similarly, in Python, you can store different kinds of information in a single list. And just like how you can add, remove, or rearrange items in your suitcase, Python lists let you do the same with data. You can also add, remove, or rearrange a Python data. So, how do you create a list in Python? Let's start with a simple empty list. To create an empty list in Python, there are two different ways you can create an empty list. The first method is by using a square bracket notation. So let's say we have a variable with the name of my list, alright? So to create an empty list, you simply use the square bracket, okay? So my list now is currently an empty list. If you print this now, you are going to print my list, right? So you are going to have an empty list printed in your console. Okay, so now we have an empty list. If you check the type of my list, so let's wrap this in the type function. Okay, so if you check the type now, you are going to see list printed in your console. So this is telling you that my list is currently of the data type of list. Okay, the second method of creating an empty list is by using the list constructor function. Okay, so to create that, we can have my list to be equal to list constructor function. Okay, it's a function, you need to invoke it using parentheses. All right, if we comment this out now, so we have just a single my list now. All right, if we print this, you are going to see that the data type, it's also list. Okay, so if we get rid of the type function now to see my list, then you are going to see that we have an empty list denoted by an empty square bracket. Now to create list with items, the easiest way is to use the square bracket notation. Okay, so to create list with items, let's say we want to create a grocery list. Okay, so we have a grocery, we have a variable with the name of grocery list. All right, so we are going to have a square bracket denoting that we are creating a list, and then inside of the square bracket we are going to write our list items. Okay, so now that we are creating a grocery list, what are the possible things that we can have in a grocery list? We can have apples. All right, so another thing we can have bananas. All right. Okay, so we can also have, or let's say we want to add carrots. All right, now if we print a grocery list, we are going to have the same thing printed in our console. So this is how you create list items. This is how you create a list with items in it. All right, and you are not limited to using just a single data type. You can have a list with numbers, you can have a list with booleans, and you can have a list with combination of different data types. All right, so let's create another list that contains different data types. We can call that, let's call it mixed list. Okay, denoting that we are creating a list with different data types. So we can have a list with hello. Okay, so mixed with a boolean, let's say true. All right, mixed with a number, let's say 42, and then we can also have a float. Okay, so we can say 3.142. Right, that's an approximate value of our pi. You can also check the type of this mixed list. Okay, so using the type function, we are going to pass mixed list. Okay, so you are going to see that it's also a list. So you are permitted to combine multiple data types in a single list. One of the characteristics of list is that list is ordered. That means it maintains the same order of arrangement with which you add the items in the list. The order does not change unless you change them manually by yourself. And in that case, you can access items in a list using their positions. List items have positions called indexes, just like we have with strings when we are dealing with strings. So we also start counting the indexes from 0. To access any items in a list, you can use the index of that item to access the item. Now let's see an example of how to access items in a list using their indices or index. Okay, let's get rid of this line, right? So let's say we have a grocery list and then want to access the second item from that list. So to do that, you use the square bracket notation to, let me get rid of this. We are still going to print it anyways. So to access the items in a list, you use the index. Okay, so to access the second item from this grocery list, now we're going to have grocery list and then use the square bracket notation just like we did with strings. And then you are going to pass the index of that item. And like I said, index starts counting from 0. So for apple now, this is going to be 0. Banana is going to be 1. Carrot is going to be 2. Okay, so the index of banana now is going to be 1. All right, if we print this now, okay, so let's print this. All right, so if I run this now, we're going to see that what we have printed is bananas. If we want to print apple, apple is the first item, and that means the index is going to be 0. All right, so if we run this now, we're going to have apples printed in our console. If we want to access the third item, which is carrot, okay, so we are going to use the index of 2. Okay, so this is how you access items from a list. But always remember that indexing starts counting at 0, not 1. And don't try to access an item that does not exist in a list using non-existent index. That will result in error. Okay, now that we have 3 items in this list, that means the last index is going to be 2. So if you want to access an item that is not existent now, that is going to result in an error. Let's say we want to access an item with the index of 4. We run it now. So we are going to see that we have an index error telling us that the list index we provided is out of range. There are some basic operations you can perform on a list, like adding items, removing items, check if an item is in a list, and many other things. Let's first look at adding items to a list. To add item to a list, we use the append method. Okay, so for example, as we have this grocery list now, let's say we want to add cherry to the list. Let's move this up so we know that we are dealing with grocery list for now. Okay, so let's say we want to add cherry to this grocery list now. To add an item to a list, you use the append method. Okay, so we have append, and then you are going to provide what you want to add to that list. Now that we want to add cherry, okay, now let's print grocery list and see what we have. So we have print grocery list. Let's run that, Ctrl F5. That is my shortcut. As you can see, grocery list now consists of apples, bananas, carrots, and cherry. In the original list, we don't have cherry in the original list, but on this line, we added cherry. Okay, so by printing grocery list now, so it's going to print the original list and then adding cherry to the list. So the grocery list now contains cherry. All right, now let's consider removing an item from a list. To remove an item from a list, we use the remove method. As simple as that. Even the name is descriptive enough. Let's say we have cherry in the list originally. Like if you override this now, you can see that we can replace this with just a single line. Okay, so if we click on this, so PyCharm is just going to hide that. But for the purpose of this lesson, we are going to have this line. Okay, now we are going to remove, let's say we want to remove bananas from the list. Okay, so to do that, we are going to use the remove method. Now we have our grocery list dot remove. Okay, so and then we are going to provide what we want to remove. Now we want to remove bananas. Okay, if you run this now, you are going to see that there is no more banana in our grocery list. Now you know how to create and use lists. You can also access their elements with indexes, and you can perform basic operations like adding and removing items. In the next lesson, we'll consider more list operations like slicing, modifying elements, and using more list method. So for that, I will see you in the next lesson.